I'm an author, speaker, life and business coach, and a direct sales expert. On the King Pinyin Show, I'll introduce you to today's hottest entrepreneurs, celebrity guests, individuals who would inspire and motivate you with their stories. And as a wife and a mom, I'll show you how to balance career and family. My name is King Pinyin, and I'm here to equip, encourage, and empower lives. Hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad that you tuned in today. I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world. Well, we have an amazing show lined up for you today. Our guest is Miss Lisa Lieberman-Wang. Lisa is an author, a speaker, a mentor and a coach to thousands of people out there in the world, and she's also a radio talk show host. She's a best-selling author of Fine to Fab. Welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you, King. I'm happy to be here.
How are you?
I'm doing awesome.
You look amazing in blue.
Thank you.
Very royal.
Thank you, to be with the King.
And I think we coordinated very well, don't you think?
Very good.
So why don't you tell our audience a little bit about you?
Well, you know, I started Fine to Fab because of a need that I had that I wasn't able to get years ago. I had dealt and suffered with an eating disorder for 13 years, from the age of 18 to almost 30. For years I was searching for solutions, looking for every self-help remedy, as well as seeking doctor's help, and finding a lot of the things out there were just ways to kind of put a bandage on something that wasn't going to fix the problem. And I think it was something that was needed. It's a time where we need to educate more women of what's possible, and people are hurting themselves and not even realizing it, using food or spending or alcohol or different substances to be able to make themselves feel good.
So what was it that you were seeking help with?
Well, I actually had an eating disorder, and I was sick from the age of 18. I had a sudden heart attack. I was in a family where I think I grew up with everybody's family. I call it, you know, a happy dysfunctional family, because I don't know if there's a functional one. So, so I grew up in that kind of family where everybody was trying to fit into a mold that everybody thought was right. And back in the time here, we had a show called Leave It to Beaver, and used to watch the TV show, and everybody looked perfect and happy and kind and didn't say a disparaging word, and that wasn't the home I grew up in. I grew up in a home where it was not always nice, and parents weren't happy being together, but they chose to stay together. And my mom had issues with weight, and so did my dad, and the whole family used food to make himself feel better. So it was one of those things where I had a roller coaster ride of trying to hide from what was going on, not have to feel something. I turned to food for support. Before you know it, I ended up going through school trying to be a perfect child. I ended up with ulcers, and by the time I was 18, I ended up losing 30 pounds in 30 days because I couldn't keep anything in my stomach. And it turned out that's when I had the sudden heart attack. My potassium was so low, they rushed me to the hospital. But the irony about it is what I learned when I got admitted. And what I learned was not something I learned at that moment. I think it took me another 10 years to figure it out. But it was the first time my dad ever said, "I love you" to me. And what I realized is, if you're sick, they're nice to you. So I stayed sick. So it was an interesting lesson later on in hindsight, but a lot of people don't realize the secondary gain for what we're doing and why we're doing it. And no one taught me this. I mean, I literally saw years of therapy. I became bulimic. I ended up binging and purging, and like I'd eat everything in sight and I'd go to get rid of it. So much to the point where I spent what some people wish to make in a year. I was up to 6 figures in food. In what people would have as a drug habit was my food habit. I chose the good girl disease.
Wow.
So I never smoked or did drugs or anything else, so instead, or drank, so I ate. And a lot of people think it's only food, and they have no idea that it can really just destroy you.
So when did you realize that it was a problem?
Well, when? How many times? Over 13 years, I had 5 hospitalizations. I spent over 6 months in hospitals. I was on 13 prescription drugs by the time I was 30.
Wow.
For antidepressants, high blood pressure, asthma, allergies, you name it. They were pretty much giving me a pill for every symptom they found. And after years of OA, Overeaters Anonymous, like trying to figure out why am I eating and how do I stop? Because everybody would tell me, just stop. And I'd be like white knuckling, you know, when your knuckles get white because you're holding on so tight, and something happens and you're over the food and you're saying, I know I shouldn't be doing this, I shouldn't be doing this, but you're still doing it.
Yes.
Well, those were the days, I mean, I didn't know how to stop it. I was at the point where I was binging and purging 18 times a day.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and there were a lot of things I had to deal with. I mean, the truth is my esophagus could have burst, and there were times I was in the hospital, saw people die, and I just, at the time, was so sick that I looked at it and said, they're not very smart, they shouldn't have done it that way. Like, instead of saying, stop what I'm doing, there was a young girl who literally drank Clorox to throw up, and I said, that wasn't smart, I wouldn't have done that. Like, instead of saying, this is dangerous, this is really crazy what I'm doing, it was such an insidious disease, and disease to me just means dis-ease with oneself, because that's all it is. I mean, people think it's more than that, but it isn't. It comes down to how you feel about yourself. And for me, I hated myself. I mean, unbelievable hate. I was wishing I wasn't here. I spent the better part of my life wishing I wasn't here.
When that was going on, did your family, your parents in particular, did they know something was wrong with you?
Well, they didn't know until the first hospitalization. Prior to that, anything that was going on was hidden. My mom owned several businesses, my dad worked, so I used to binge everything and, find the cookies and eat it, and then if I ate too much, I'd go to the store, buy more, and replace it before they found out it was missing. So it became one of those things where when they did find out, they started locking the cabinets, thinking that would stop me. I just found other ways to get food. I mean, it's like, lock the cabinet, really? Seriously, they did. Like, really? But yeah, they did find out.
So you did whatever it took to eat.
Yeah.
Now, what do you mean by an eating disorder? Because that's a term that's always thrown around, and I'm not sure many people understand what that means exactly. So while you think about that, and when we come back from the break, I want you to explain to our audience what we mean by an eating disorder.
Absolutely.
Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. Our guest is Miss Lisa Lieberman-Wang. She's an author, a trusted guide, a radio talk show host, and a #1 bestseller of Fine to Fab. So Lisa, tell us, what is an eating disorder?
Well, eating disorders are something that most people think they don't attach themselves to, but there's over 10 million women with eating disorders in the United States.
10 million?
Yes, and there's 1 million men. There's actually, the eating disorder can equate to anybody who's starving themselves, who's binging, compulsively overeating, purging. So it could be anorexic, bulimic, compulsive overeaters. Emotional eaters can be eating disorders. Normally they're clinically diagnosed at that point where a professional says they have a challenge, they're seeking help. But the hardest part to really digest and to swallow is there's 24 million people with disordered eating. And that's where I know we can relate to this, because most people are going to turn around and raise their hand and say, me too, and I know this because 24 million of them do it, where you're constantly on a diet, where you've lost and gained the same 10, 20, 30, 40 pounds only 100 times. And this week I'm on this diet. And then you eat right, and then you go on a binge. And then after you go on a binge, you say, oh, I'm not going to do that again, and you stop eating. So now you're going to starve yourself. And then you go up and down with that yo-yo. That's disordered eating. And that's as dangerous, actually even, I want to say sometimes more dangerous, because you don't realize the other challenges and ramifications that you're having with it. It affects people's metabolism, their heart, it affects so many different things in their body and how even their emotional ups and downs. And it causes a lot of people with depression. They don't even realize it based on how they're taking care of their body. So there's a lot of other health challenges that come with it.
Wow. Now, with this, as far as disordered eating goes, is that something that has to be diagnosed, or is it just under the radar?
I think it's under the radar because most people won't even acknowledge it. They'll say, I just need another diet. And that's really been the challenge, because every diet will work. That's always very frustrating to me. Every diet will work. The challenge is when people stop the diet, because all of a sudden it becomes that yo-yo again. And because it's not about a diet. Diets don't work in the sense of if it's over, it's a lifestyle. So learning how to eat right, eat what your body needs, learning the foundation of health of you physically as well as emotionally is really what's key. The irony about what I do is I never talk about food. I don't. People always want to say, they want to talk about, well, this is what I ate. I don't care what you ate. I don't care about what it was or what time it was. I care about how you felt. What was going on internally at that moment? Was something exciting happening, you were celebrating, and you relate that to let's go eat and celebrate? Or was it something that you were frustrated and angry, and you turned around and you said, I can't wait to find the food, you know, I want to eat something right now, and you find yourself in front of the refrigerator. So disordered eating comes when we're eating by emotional needs, and we're looking to fill a need.
Now, why is there such a disparity between the men with an eating disorder and the women? 1 million to 10 million women. Is there any reason behind
You know,
that?
I think it's about diagnosis. Women are always worried about how they look and losing weight. So it's those numbers come from what's reported by people seeking help. But for men, it's also, they're not on as many diets as we are. I mean, think about it. Somebody that's a gentleman that might be heavy, they go, oh, he's got a good life, right? They're not saying, oh, these, you know, maybe it's a bad wife.
The beer belly.
Yeah, the beer belly. It's okay. He must be doing good. Probably has money. You know, where a woman being heavy, it's, oh, she's not taking care of herself.
Right.
And then we have to be on the next diet, or I'll be okay when I lose 5 pounds. I'll be okay when I lose 10 pounds. I mean, really what we're saying is I'll be okay when I'm happy with myself, and we usually equate a time in our lives that we were happy, and we look for that number to show up again. Because I always find it interesting, women will say, I'll say, well, what is your ideal weight? And they'll give me a number. And then I say, well, were you ever that number? And if they were, they say, yeah, it was the best time of my life, and I had the most friends, and life was good, and my job was good, and the kids were, whatever it was. So it's not actually the weight, it's the feeling that they're equating it to. And one of the challenges in even helping people is to get rid of the scale. And that's one of the first things I actually work with my clients. I make them throw their scale away. It definitely, because what happens is otherwise it's a good day or a bad day based on the scale. I mean, have you ever had those?
Yes, I have. I literally have, because I started paying attention to my diet and lifestyle a few months ago, and I got to a point where I was doing so good, and then I got to a point where I kind of plateaued, and I was so frustrated because every day I got on the scale and it was the same.
Yeah,
and I'm thinking, but I'm doing so good. What is going on? And just like you said, the scale pretty much depicted how the rest of my day was going to go.
Right.
You know, if the weight was the same, I was sad, thinking about what am I doing wrong,
right,
what can I do better, and if it was good, I went out and did a little dance, you know, in celebration. So that's
and you might have also not just had the dance, you might have actually decided I could have that candy, I did good.
I say that, yeah, right.
Because that's the self-sabotage. That's where we don't even realize we're doing it. Well, I did so good, I can celebrate. But what happens, our definition of celebrating. And also, I know what part of your story is, you're not just eating right, but you were exercising, and muscle dictates metabolism. So if you look at the scale, your numbers are going to go up, because muscle weighs more than fat.
Right.
So now you're thinking, oh, I'm doing all this, but my number's not going down. Get rid of the scale. It's about inches.
Right.
Because you're going to lose inches, and that's even more important. And then you're going to feel better. You're going to have more energy. And at the end of the day, that's what we want.
And just earlier on, you were sharing with us about how many times you really should drink water a day and how often you need to eat. Can you share that with our audience?
Yeah. Really, we should all be drinking half our body weight in ounces. So if you weigh 150 pounds, you want to be drinking 75 ounces a day of water. And one of the things that I think is so funny is people like, well, I work, I don't want to be drinking, I'll be running to the bathroom all the time. And I'm saying, yay, great, you know, better than a cigarette break, take a pee break. And it's true, right? But
I like that,
every half hour you should be in the bathroom. And you know, you should be doing a number one every half hour. If you're not, you're probably dehydrated. You know, and then eating for your body. Most of the time we need to be eating every 3 to 4 hours. And I'm not talking what people think is a normal serving. I mean, really, a serving can be this big. You know, our 4 ounces is the size of your palm. Most people's palm, 3 to 4 ounces of meat. And most people are eating portions like this. Or I was working with somebody and they said to me, well, I only eat what they serve me in the restaurant. And I asked them what kind of restaurants. Were they very expensive where they give you this portion, or were they the ones that give you a big family size? Because well, I'm only eating 1 plate. I said, only 1 plate? 1 plate in most restaurants is 2 servings. That's 2 meals.
Or 3.
Or 3, right. And so, well, he goes, well, my brothers eat more than that. I'm like, well, then how big are your brothers? I mean, it all comes down to that. It's portion control, it's consistency, you know, and it's also kind of thinking about if we're not feeding ourselves and we're not burning the furnace, because we have a fireplace here, it's perfect, what happens is our body goes into hibernation like bears. and we start storing fat as energy. It doesn't know it's ever going to be fed again. So if you don't continually feed that fire, it's going to just hold on to it and go into like a starvation mode, and you're going to get fat. So you can think, well, I'm not eating much. Well, that's probably why you're getting fat.
Right.
So I'm always looking for food. I'm like the endless pit.
Right. So because your body's holding on to it.
Well, no, with me, not with, yeah, there would be if I wasn't, right? But because I eat every 3 to 4 hours, my metabolism is so fast, I can continually eat.
Wow.
Yeah.
And all of this you learn on your journey.
This was all part of the journey because you know what? I don't believe in diets anymore. I think diets are just die with a T at the end of it. So
die with a T at the end of it. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Die today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I like that. Well, you know what? We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to ask you what fine to fab means, because I know it means something special to you, and I want you to share that with our audience. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. Lisa, I'm having a great time, but I have a question for you. Why do people constantly turn to food?
Well, food is really, like I said before, the symptom. It's where we're looking to fill a need. So there are times that you'll find yourself in front of the refrigerator, in front of the cabinet, and you ate an hour ago. And you know you're not hungry, but you're looking for something. Yeah, we've all been there. I can raise my hand to it for sure. I did it for 13 years. And it's been 20 years where I haven't done that anymore. So I feel like all of a sudden I've had this huge burden taken off of me. But it was because of asking better questions. We're usually turning to food because we're trying to fill a void. We're trying to fill something. Now think about that. It's like a cavity. You're trying to fill something. You're trying to fill a need. You want to feel loved, appreciated, cared for. And when we were younger, when we were looking for that attention, we cried and our mom fed us and we felt loved, right? So as adults, it just makes sense that we might do the same thing to feel that connection, to feel like we're part of something. And a lot of people associate food to occasions, feeling good, happy times, or even ways to console themselves. So it becomes one of those, again, symptoms of how we're dealing with life. So why? We're filling a void. And what happens when it's not food, it's something else. And it becomes important for people to ask themselves better questions all the time, like, what am I really hungry for? Like, what do I want right now? Right. I think sometimes we forget to ask that question. Instead, we're saying, oh, what do I want? And we're looking in the fridge, what do I want? And instead of saying, what am I really hungry for? I just ate an hour ago.
Right.
So I know I'm not hungry.
Right. You know, I actually heard that 9 out of 10 times, when you feel that you're hungry, you're actually thirsty.
Absolutely. I always say if the first thing you do is have a glass of water and wait 20 minutes, because it actually takes us 20 minutes before we even know we're full. So most people will just devour food in 5 minutes and then they overeat because they don't get to a point of satisfaction for 20.
Wow.
So we tend to overeat. So even pacing it, you know, eating when you're not under stress, eating in a calm situation, you know, in full sight. Sometimes what we'll do, and I've done this before, I don't know if you did, where I'm really good in front of other people, and then when they turn their back, you know, I'm like, you know, I'm in the kitchen, and all of a sudden I'm putting things away, and it's going here and there, here, right? And you're feeding yourself too. And being aware of that, I mean, where I have rules that if you're not sitting down, you're not eating. In other words, until you can sit in a peaceful place, then it's not a meal time, because most people will graze through their meal because while they're cooking, they're grazing, and then they sit and have a second meal. And it's because we don't realize this unconscious act that we're doing, and it's just like we're filling something.
Right.
So to start becoming aware of what food is doing for you.
Right. So you're #1 best-selling author of Fine to Fab, and I know Fine to Fab means something to you. What does that mean? What does it stand for?
Well, King,
is there a meaning?
Oh, it's a huge meaning for it. I spent so many years people going, "How are you doing? How are you doing?" I'd say, "Fine." And they kept saying, "Well, how are you doing?" I'd say, "Fine." And eventually I got so pissed and I said, "I'm fine. I'm effed up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. I'm fine." Because I was fine, that fine. And eventually I decided that I'd rather be fab, and that's fabulous, awesome, beautiful. And I think everybody out there already starts at fab. We're just spending too much energy and telling ourselves we're not.
And in this book, you talk about 7 secrets to an empowered life. Would you mind sharing about 2 of those with our audience?
Well, the first one is breaking through toxic emotions and meanings. Like what happens is somebody can look at you the wrong way and all of a sudden you're saying, oh, this means that, and you get all upset, and half the time it doesn't even mean anything about what you thought it was. So breaking through the meanings you put to things, of how someone said something, did something, or even the meaning you give anything. That's the first one. And another one is really acknowledging the fear and doubt. I mean, all of us are just afraid. We're afraid we're not going to be accepted, people won't love us or anything else, but acknowledging it. It's okay. That's called being human. But then moving forward anyway. And you know, there's 7 of them, but I'll give you one more, which I think is my favorite one, is practicing gratitude.
Oh, yes.
And peace and gratitude and celebrating. You know, being appreciative for what we have right here, right now. And I know that, you know, you have so much heritage that goes back to Africa, and I was there last year, and it was incredible because you have a different appreciation for what we have today when you see what others don't have.
Right.
And for me, practicing every day, saying, you know, there was a time when I was so depressed, I didn't want to do anything. I had to start with, I'm grateful I have 2 hands, I have 2 feet, I have 2 eyes, I can walk, I can talk, I can drive. I mean, it could be that easy where people are thinking, well, I don't have a mansion. Who cares? You know, we still have potential to do anything that we want. And celebrating the littlest things. You know, you just got up today. Yay! It could be a celebration.
Right. It's every day above ground
is a good day. Yes.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, Lisa, this has been very, very enlightening. I want to thank you so much for coming.
Oh, my pleasure.
And I look forward to having you on the show again.
Oh, thank you for having me here. It's been fabulous.
You're welcome. Well, today was a good day. I'm so glad you tuned in. Look up Lisa. Her website is fine2fab.com. I'm sure she's going to share some really invaluable tools and strategies with you if you struggle with eating disorder, or if you know somebody who struggles with eating disorder. And as we learn from her, disordered eating, you know, there's a difference between the two, as I just learned, and I'm hoping you learn the same thing too. So thank you so much for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, please check out my website, kingpinyin.com. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or connect with me on Instagram. My name is King Pinyin, and I'm here to equip, encourage, and empower lives.